the quickest and easiest way to adopt AI today is on the enablement side, using it to do the things that managers no longer can.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Revenue Optimists. We are a space where revenue operations and go-to-market teams can come together to learn from one another in order to grow their businesses. My name is Dave Nelson, and today I'm very fortunate to be joined by Cliff Simon, who is the founder and CEO of Polaris. Cliff, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, David.
Cliff, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I've been in go-to-market going on 2 decades now, multiple different functions, done 0 to 10 as a IC, 0 to 15 as a director, and then most recently a 0 to 8 in 20 months with Carabiner.
Wow.
And now doing it all over again.
Amazing. Okay, and so now you've started Polaris. Can you tell us more about what Polaris is doing and focusing on?
Sure. Yeah. So we're a RevOps agency, but highly focused on helping companies actually deploy AI. My team did a ton of research earlier this year and really got to understand what was good versus what was just good marketing. And where we're helping companies is we're helping to normalize that data layer and drive that normalization both across the different pieces of the application layer and then down again into like a CDP and CDW. Once that's been completed, then we're building agentic solutions on top of that to really drive that efficiency and productivity gain.
Amazing. Okay, well, I want to dive into all of that. And right now, AI is that hot topic. I think everyone out there is kind of at a different maturity level in where they've adopted. Some are just getting started, some have already put lots of projects in place. You've probably seen a ton. What are you seeing as some of the kind of most successful areas that folks are leveraging AI for improving their businesses?
Honestly, the quickest and easiest way to adopt AI today is on the enablement side. So using it to do the things that managers no longer can. Like, we can't listen to all these calls, right? We can't get in front of all the different data points that keep coming into our organizations. There's not this problem that we used to have where there wasn't enough data. Now we have too much of it. We can't sift through it. And it's becoming this bottleneck of how do we actually find the pieces of that data that matter and stitch that together. So using AI to drive that, as well as using AI to help understand your reps, what conversations do they need to be having, using it to practice. Gosh, we don't practice ever, right? I know KD is always really big on that. And taking the time to actually focus on the moments that matter for our customers, using AI to find those moments and to, again, practice them. So
Amazing. Okay, that's fantastic. And how are you seeing folks dive into that? Because you're right, there's call recorders and whatnot. I think they're doing a great job of getting the transcripts of what's being said. How are you seeing that being leveraged to then stitch together and use it for enablement and practice, like you said?
sure. So you could look at your typical call recording softwares. All of that needs to be tagged appropriately. That needs to end up in CRM so that you can sift through it and categorize that data, have it tagged appropriately. Once you've done that, you should be feeding that information into some type of AI engine that your sales team can use for enablement. There's a bunch of them on the market today. I think of Luster, Avara, Hyperbound. Folks tend to use a lot of those today, where now you're able to go and have your rep train not just in the moment, but get feedback in the moment, right? So when they go through a prompt or they try to train against a specific persona, when you're having that conversation, having the avatar actually stop and give live feedback, because that's what really makes the difference. Not going through an entire session of a 35-minute, 40-minute demo and then getting feedback after the fact. It has to be in the moment feedback that actually drives the brain changes for the reps.
Amazing. Okay, so they're practicing and getting live feedback right as they're pitching and going through the demo or
Right.
going through the message.
And which is something our sales leaders can't do at scale,
No.
right?
Yeah.
But they can then review that information and really help their reps understand where they're getting better. And obviously the KPIs are gonna show out.
Yeah. I mean, even the practice alone, I think you're exactly right. The companies just don't have the bandwidth to be practicing all the time. And so that practice with the feedback combined, would be fantastic. That's awesome. Okay, so you mentioned enablement as well. Was there other areas that you're seeing projects for enablement, or is it that mostly that practice?
On the practice side, and then also putting together the battle cards, right? How do we think about the deep research on industry, micro industry, persona? That's super time consuming. AI can do that, an 80, 85% job. And now you have a human being leveraging that to get to an output quicker.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So I think that there's so many things that we haven't even discovered that we could do with AI yet. What are the things that you are hoping for that AI will be able to do in the near future that may not exist yet or that you haven't seen done yet?
I mean, just the stuff I'm amazed every day when I get with my team. And I don't mean that to sound like hyperbolic. Like I actually am amazed. Like they're building out, web scrapers now to find really interesting contextual signals. And they're building these scrapers in such a way that it mimics human behavior, right? So I'm not a bot that's going out and scraping an entire website. They're creating a bot that goes to that website 100 different times at different moments and only looks at certain portions of it and then stitches all of that together in the background to give you the full view, but in order to make sure that they're viewing the website like a human so that they're not being given an agentic type of response from the website or being blocked from the
Interesting.
site. Different things like that. The other place I think that AI is really going to be useful is taking real world signals and driving that into a digital reality. So one of the guys on my team, he's been working on this piece where we are working with coffee shops, right? Super, super niche, but we're helping them with their marketing and helping them figure out what train lines their customers are on so we can target them to say, hey, this train line happens to be canceled right now, or there's a delay. Come into the coffee shop, use the Wi-Fi, get your work done. Coffee's half off. Like, and because it's first party data, sending out a text, right? Getting into that person's inbox or on their phone. And now we're driving a highly contextualized message to someone who's feeling a very specific pain point
Yeah.
in the moment when that pain point's occurring.
I was just going to say, in the moment, in the location of where they're at in real time. That's very cool. I like that. Okay, so there are a ton of different things that companies can do with AI. How do you recommend to companies to go prioritize which projects they want to bite off first?
I would start off by having some type of intake form for your RevOps team or your BizOps team and start looking at the things that the reps are asking for over and over and over again and seeing what out of that can be automated by an agentic solution. Put that off to the side and continue to iterate and iterate and iterate. The idea here is that we want machines to do the things that machines can do well and let people focus on the things that they are uniquely gifted to do.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. And I agree with you about the iterate and iterate because just like any project, even pre AI, anything you're building in house, you need to have kind of a bit of a roadmap behind and not just create the MVP and walk away to the next project. So there's always going to be further asks. That iteration is always going to be necessary.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Amazing. Okay, so there's a ton of tools out there today too with that are marketing as AI. Some of it feels like is more marketing than anything because we all know what they had done traditionally. How are you able to kind of discern the difference and the impact that these quote unquote AI tools may actually have on your return on investment, on your day-to-day business, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we actually went really deep on this earlier in the year. We put together a rubric looking at the complexity of the LLM, looking at the maturity of the models, looking at the capability for that model to be trained, looking at the future roadmap, and then tying that up against significant milestone markers like security, data management, and rights. The other piece was if you had a team that was using a tool like this, not to say that we will want to replace people, but like how far could you mitigate headcount cost? I think some of the most easy areas are that tier one support. Internally, we might talk about it as case deflection, but realistically, we're seeing such great adoption across the industry when it comes to CS using AI because AI is always on. It gets to a faster resolution because it can search a wide and vast database and knowledge base, which means the customer is getting to a better resolution. They have a better experience and they're in and out because they don't have to go and wait to talk to somebody. So it's areas like that where you get a really high level of return. And we're seeing something similar across a smaller percentage of the AI players that are out there today. To your point, a ton of it is just really good marketing and it's hard to know. And that's the one thing I keep hearing from sales leaders over and over and over again is that there's a ton of pressure for them to go out, to go into the market. It's coming from their CEO, it's coming from their board, to go out, bring a solution in, but they're not sure which one to be using. And everyone's asking their friends, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Can you help me understand? So there's a lot of confusion out there.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, that's all a lot of us all learn, right? From what you read, from who people you talk to and what
Of
others have
course.
tried. So that all makes sense. And until you've tried it, until someone's tried it, it's hard to tell how much of an impact it's going to have.
Which is one of the reasons we're going out and doing this AI roadshow, right? We've looked at all these vendors, we've talked to people, and we're actually asking the vendors to come out and bring their customers to tell the story of how they're using it, because that's where the value is,
Yeah, that's a
hearing it
great
from other
idea.
people.
Yeah, that's huge. You mentioned agentic solutions as well. Have you implemented or seen any implemented that have gone really well?
Yeah, tons. A lot of them focusing more on the top of funnel, that deep research, driving that information back into a CRM, normalizing that data, right? So helping companies look at ICP, TAM analysis, tiering of that TAM, and then breaking out into messaging and battle cards across multiple personas within that buying committee. That's gone really well. And I think that's sort of just the tip of the iceberg, but it works well because that's all highly categorized data, and it's very straightforward for an AI to understand what you are asking of it. Whereas some other things like qualification matrices or any types of buying requirements, those things can be a little bit looser. And I think it's harder because it's more subjective for the AI to understand.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so doing TAM analysis and looking at ICP. Any others? I know that you talked about case deflection and whatnot. Usually those
Yep.
are an agentic solution. I think early on, a lot of the experiences were some hallucinations and whatnot, but that they're getting better. How have you seen that kind of improve over time?
I think the hallucination bits actually are just a misunderstanding of how generative AI works. It's not meant to give you the perfect solution. You're putting in, a fuzzy type of input, right? It's not the same input every single time.
Yeah.
And you're expecting a similar-ish answer on the outside. But because of the way agentic works and generative works, 20% of the time it's not going to be right. So you have to drive that over. That's because it's guessing, right? It's putting all of these pieces together and trying to predict what it wants, you want it to say next. Whereas when you're driving workflow automation, this is always the same input or the same sets of inputs. This is the logic I want you to follow, and this is the output I want to see every single time. If we focus more on workflow automations and driving vast amounts of data to be understood and look for that correlation and causation, I think that's a much easier use case. And people are going to find it to be a lot more satisfactory as far as the outputs because they're going to be consistent.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The other thing we've seen is that I think a lot of it comes down to expectation too, on what do you expect to have happen, and that it's unrealistic to think that every answer is going to be answered perfectly. Every question is going to be answered perfectly. And so if people take the approach that they're expecting a lot of the responses to say, hey, we'll put you in touch with a live person, as they get better and as they then take that question and retrain the model, all of a sudden it will start to get better and you'll start to see that more return on investment. But don't expect it right off the bat because it's just an unrealistic expectation. And that as you go over time, it'll improve dramatically.
On the expectation too is that people are just going to know how to use these things. There, in most companies, isn't a set protocol or a overarching process or design on how they want their employees to use AI. So you've largely said, hey, I'm going out and buying this enterprise grade access to OpenAI or Anthropic, Perplexity, whatever, and you toss it at a team and you say, go figure it out. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Take the time, just like you would anything else, schedule a half hour a week, 15 minutes a day, whatever it is, for that person to go and use it, and give them some prompts, give them some idea to what you want them to try so that they can get excited and have those little wow moments and then dig deeper into the journey because they actually become naturally curious and have the desire to learn.